Good morning, here, everybody, and Dr. Mate and the dignitaries on the stage. Um, I come from a practicing background, and I can see a number of young people sitting here. I guess they're from the management school here. And as the topic is on environment and sustainability, I'm probably going to talk about more practice. And I know there's a lot of thought leadership that's gone since yesterday and today, and I don't think that I need to repeat it with all the wonderful presentations you all have heard. The other good news is I don't have slides, so probably people will just have to listen to me. Yeah. I also chair a company called Ingersoll Rand. I don't know how many of you are aware of this company called Ingersoll Rand. Any people are aware of this company? It's a very large engineering company. We're about $15 billion globally. But I'm going to take a couple of examples and then probably drive it down within the allotted time on this whole area of environment and sustainability and what we're trying to do. A few years ago, I would say when our teams were in the field, we had a water war in Gurgaon. I don't know how many of you remember actually. There was a water war in Gurgaon where a number of employees couldn't actually come to our office. There was traffic blockage because two villages in the outskirts of Gurgaon had an issue of water, and they actually blocked the roads and people couldn't come in. So one of the things at that time when I was asked to actually address a similar gathering, I did realize that the cost of social unrest, and I just kind of keep repeating this statement every time, that the cost of social unrest can always overwhelm or actually overshadow the intention of shareholder value maximization or profitability. Because what we realized, or at least I realized at that particular point of time, was if my employees, my researchers, my innovators, my folks in the market cannot actually perform because there is a cost of social unrest and people are unable to come because of social reasons, then this whole idea of the industry trying to either maximize profits or to actually deliver more value to the shareholders just does not stand any ground. And at that point, we realized that probably we need to change the business model slightly differently. And as you will realize that when you talk about industry, and as you talk about industry, you really need to kind of figure out what solutions, what products, and what applications you can actually drive in the market, which also make economic viability. Obviously, industry is not there for charity, but at the end of the day, you have to make it economically viable. We were looking at food security as a big problem in the country. And when we looked at food security as a big problem in the country, we focused on an area called cold chain. And I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard about it. Cold chain is a big area. And I asked my business development, my vice presidents to go and actually do an analysis in the market. And they came back with some very respectful numbers, or at least then numbers which really created a whole lot of opportunity. And they came back and said, in India, we waste 25 to 30% of the food. It's valued at a certain X amount of thousands of crores. And we actually honed it down and we figured out that this wastage was anywhere between 60,000 to 90,000 crores. 30% of food production, or at least the perishable food, was being wasted, whether it was meat, food, fruits, etc., was being wasted either through the transportation logistics network or at the point of production. So we realized that there's a good opportunity for us to actually do something in terms of technology and innovation. So we got a bunch of engineers, we put a bunch of scientists, we said, go and innovate a solution where we can actually address this. So we said, yes, we need to build cold chains, we need to build a mobile infrastructure where we can actually carry food from farm to fork. We can actually create a whole model and we can actually do it. So we said as a first stage, we will go and build a 5,000-ton cold storage in a bigger state, and we said, let's go to a few states. So we went to Gujarat, we went to Andhra Pradesh, we went to Karnataka, we went to Rajasthan, etc. And as we went to the villages, we realized that we could build this phenomenal technology of actually having multi-graded temperature zones in this 5,000-ton storage area. But what was missing was the grid power was not available. So you really couldn't actually make a cold chain store in the rural areas because the grid power was not available. That forced us back to think, what do we do next? And so I asked my team, I said, go back to the drawing board and redesign this whole thing. The team came back and said, yes, there's a solution. What we will do is we'll build solar cold chains driven on solar, but we can't do 5,000 tons. So that forced us to think about how about making distributed cold chains across an area. And we said, why don't we build 100-ton solar cold chains and actually distribute them around? And we thought we actually cracked the solution. We can now actually go to a district or a village and say we can actually provide you with 100-ton solar cold chains, which can actually store and actually reduce the wastage of food. Then came the issue of, how do you transport this food, which is perishable, from farm to the distribution center? So we said that should be easy. Indian roads are very difficult to travel, so we will use one of the locally manufactured trucks. We can't put one of those Western large container trucks over here. We'll actually put a truck which is small. So we worked with Tata. We said we're going to use your Tata Ace. We're going to actually redesign this truck and actually put a carrier which will actually cool the food, and we can take it from the storage area to the distribution center. Now, as we build this technology, the technology worked. We went back to the farmer, we went back to the distributor, and we said, okay, now we can actually transport it from where you produce to the distribution center. And then we realized that the distributor came back and said, you know what, if you guys are going to put this air conditioning or this temperature refrigeration system, this is going to consume more fuel. We're not prepared to pay for the fuel. Because it's going to consume more fuel, it's going to be more expensive. We don't want to pay for it. So we said, okay, if you're not going to pay for it, how do we actually transport food from a storage warehouse to the distributor? And when we really looked at it, this was not economically feasible if we didn't do that, because what would you do just storing it and if you can't transport it? So we went back again onto the drawing board and we said, please redesign this again. And then the engineers sat down and they said, okay, we'll skip the engine on the refrigeration. We will actually drive it through batteries. So we actually redesigned it and we said, let's drive it through batteries. It'll not consume fuel. It'll actually be an innovation in India. We will actually have a distributed static warehouse system. We'll have a mobile warehouse, a mobile logistics system, which will actually run on batteries. And that solves the problem. But in this process, what we realized is, and of course, the model is now beginning to work. We're actually working with many states, and I think it's kind of coming out to be very successful. But in this whole process, what we realized is this is not about one organization, one industry trying to solve one problem. The oranges would degrade in a certain way, the apples would degrade in a certain way, the fish would degrade in a certain way. You needed information, you needed technology, you needed interventions where they had to have multiple, I would say, knowledge partners who could actually be converged together to create a solution. So the way I look at it now in the future is the traditional way of creating markets or serving markets using a product is no longer valid. But now the new ways to look at truly is, if there is an issue in the market, if there's an issue in the society, how do you take that problem and create a solution which really needs to have a major convergence of multiple partners to create a solution? And therefore, though I kind of continue to serve the chairman of Ingersoll Rand, what we did is a few months ago, we got a few of the global experts together around the world, and we said, we want to figure out a converged platform. When I go to a city, a municipality, or a state and tell them we got to talk about urban rejuvenation or we got to talk about smart cities, you cannot be talking about one single area or saying, I will fix your water problem or I'll fix your energy problem. There has got to be an umbrella which actually brings in multiple technologies together. So about 3 months ago, we actually launched an organization called Valluri Technology Accelerators, where we said we're going to take 5 domains. And of course, nowadays you hear a lot about smart cities with ICT interventions. So people saying, we're going to put sensors, we're going to collect the data, we're going to analyze it, we're going to tell you how good or how bad you are. But forget that layer, just get down to a layer below. What would be the reasons for a society to live well? It's got to be some basic principles in the society which really need to be addressed. Water, energy, waste, healthcare, land use. So we actually brainstormed this whole piece and we said, we're going to create 5 domains. So when I go to Mumbai Municipal Corporation, I should be the one-stop person to say, listen, we've got these 5 areas and we've got a plethora of technologies in each of these areas where we can help you design the whole technical solution. In some cases, it might be that you actually want to desalinate seawater and actually make it fresh water. In some cases, it might be that you want to actually take wastewater, treat it, take the waste out, and actually create it into energy and use it back as a metabolism activity, which says that there has to be a circular process of economic rejuvenation. So recently, I was with Mr. Naidu in Vizag, and we had this discussion along with this municipal commissioner. And one of the things they said is, what we want to do, 3% of our wastage or of our water treatment actually gets treated. 3% of our wastewater only gets treated. The world benchmark is 55%. What can we do here? Now, what we want to do over here is we want to actually treat this wastewater, take the waste out, convert them into gases, and we actually want to use that gas as a methane gas to run our transportation system. So we want to have our transportation system actually run on methane. Can you people actually design a whole circular economic approach? And I think this should be the future when you talk about environment and sustainability, is how can you actually reuse it? How can you actually reuse the resources that are either being wasted or generated, and how can you put that together? So I know that the distinguished panel on the stage, and I heard Dr. Osilke talking about a number of areas of water treatment, etc. But I would certainly urge the thought leaders in this August gathering that I think as a nation, as a country, we need to figure out how do we actually build this converged platform of multiple domains which can come together to actually formulate a solution or formulate an issue. And I think we all understand there's a huge population that does not get the appropriate services, the appropriate living conditions. But we have to actually now create these platforms. We've got too many multiple platforms in this country where everyone does a lot of domain work, but somehow it does not converge. So what we have done now is we've actually created this platform. So 3 weeks ago, the discussion with the Rajasthan government was, give us 300 houses, and we will apply all possible interventions over here to demonstrate to you that if water can be treated, if energy can be stored, if land use can be redefined, if waste can be actually redeployed, and if we can actually pull the whole ICT network together, then the society begins to understand the benefits of a demonstration unit which can then be multiplied. I mean, we've seen the telecom example. The late 90s was a very, very slow inception, but once the society started accepting it, you started seeing a hockey stick growth. So I think right now, as we talk about environment and sustainability, I certainly believe that the future for us is to probably look at rural, semi-urban, urban, and actually create these examples in all these localities to say, when we deploy a converged technology platform, which really is built in India, by India, for India, and certainly not closing our opinions about saying we should not kind of absorb technologies from the rest of the world, I think we should do it. We should do it, we should re-engineer it, we should reprocess it. There's a whole amount of SME and medium-scale industries which do not run on capacity today. We don't need to truly create new manufacturing plants. We can actually upload them. We can actually have a much better capacity utilization. But if we do that, I think you're actually not only reducing resources, but you're creating solutions and options which can actually drive that. So whether the work is being done in IITs or IIMs or NITs or regional colleges or at the government research labs, I do believe that from an industry standpoint, we got to figure out these platforms where we can bring a number of these things together and actually deploy the most effective solutions at a number of these villages, rural areas, and urban areas, whether you call it urban rejuvenation, whether you call it as smart cities, greenfield projects, brownfield projects. I think there's a tremendous amount of work we can do. As I have just one more minute, and I'm going to close my talk in 1 minute. The other piece, which I also believe is this whole social engagement of how do we create. And I'm going to give you one small example, even if I run 30 seconds above, with the permission of the chair. We recently ran an experiment of stopping to hire management graduates in our organization. We said we're actually going to hire only entrepreneurs. The caveat was going to be that we're going to put these entrepreneurs in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. They will not work in the metro cities. But what we did is we trained them on sustainability, we trained them on environment, we trained them on products, how they can be actually deployed in tier 2, tier 3 cities, but look at market problems and come back to us for solutions. Now, what that's beginning to do is when you actually train these people and you actually put them in these smaller cities and towns, they become the social creators of telling people how to use much more environment sustainable solutions. And I think that's beginning to change because it not only creates an economic value for them, but they also hire people with the kind of methodology that they should be deploying. And I can tell you that this experiment for us, we hired 15 people, and probably all 15 people are really now working in tier 2, tier 3 cities where they're actually creating markets economically, which are solutions which are more environmentally sustainable and more effective. So I think there are solutions which we all collectively can do a number of areas by just kind of getting together, but we need to create those platforms. And I'm glad that we've got many, many thought leaders in India who joined us to actually create this movement now to look at just these fundamental 5 basic areas of bringing in technologies, thoughts, processes together, which can be deployed. Thank you very much. Very much.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman. I thought I will take you through few slides, the journey towards smart city. I think this kind of an evolution, which I would try to portray, will throw up some questions, and I think some different perspectives. How are we heading to this concept? And I'd like to then make some of my own remarks. I'll try to make them as boldly as I can, because I completely disagree with the concept of smart city. Completely disagree.